Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Harrison-Morton Middle School. My name is Pat McNulty. I'm the proud principal of Harrison-Morton Middle School. I'm entering my 5th year as principal of Harrison-Morton and my 24th year in the district, which all started in 2000, teaching tech ed on the first floor here at Harrison-Morton. So things have a tendency to circle. So very proud of that. You are in a building that is almost 150 years. Next year, the 24-25 school year, it'll be the 150th year in existence. It looks great, and shout out to all the custodians, facilities, and everyone that takes such a good care of it. Welcome members of the school board, my colleagues at the district office, and at the building principals and administrators from the building level, and to our legislators here and PA House of Representatives. Thank you for all being here and your continued hard work for everything you do, not only for the kids of Harrison-Morton, the kids of Allentown, Lehigh County as a whole. So we appreciate all the support they give, and it's really unwavering how much support they give us, and we couldn't do it without them. So it is my pleasure to turn it over to start the program to our superintendent, Dr. Carol Burks.
Thank you, Principal McNulty. Let's give him another round of applause. He's been principal for a building that we're still standing in that's almost 150 years old. That's amazing. And we're still standing. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you and your commitment to our children. I am extremely honored to be here this morning. First, I want to acknowledge our esteemed state representatives for convening us here this morning. Just think about it. Here in Allentown, we have our House Education Chairperson right here in Allentown, Representative Swire. Let's give her a round of applause. I thought that was impressive. We also have our state representative, Michael Schosberg, who is our Democratic House Chairperson. State Representative Siegel. And Senator Nick Miller. I want to say I thank you very much for your advocacy and your commitment to Allentown, and we know that you're doing a lot of hard work, not just for Allentown, but for across the state, but of course, we're really focused on Allentown. So thank you so much for your commitment to Allentown. I also want to thank everyone who came out this morning, all the educators that I'm so fortunate to serve with, as well as all of our staff, to our families who are here today. Thank you for allowing us to serve your children, as well as to the media for being here and to elevate this important story and put things into context for everyone. When I did my graduate study at Columbia, I learned a phrase called social equity. And that social equity is defined as providing equitable funding for urban school districts is a matter of social equity and fairness. I also was able to engage and look at some studies that were conducted by the Educational Law Center right here in Pennsylvania, as well as the Civil Rights Project from the University of California. And they said, it highlighted that disparities in funding when they affect children of color, children who live in urban centers, it has a significant impact, not just from when they're in school, but on poverty in general and on the overall community. Today I stand before you to really stress the importance of equitable funding for students, particularly the students here in Allentown. Just think about it. We have 16,000 sensational students here in Allentown. And on average, when we look at the state average per pupil expenditure, the state spends about $18,000 per pupil. And here in Allentown, we spend a little over $15,000 per pupil. Now, that may sound really insignificant to some people. Oh, that's only $2,765. But if you multiply that number by 16,000 per pupil, we're talking a $44 million gap difference. I think I got my math right, Miss Richards? Okay. They know I'm a language arts teacher. So when you apply that same math and you look across the county, you see also those significant differences. So I want to stress, by Allentown receiving a level up money, we received last year, the 2021-22 school year, we received a little over $6 million additional funding. beyond our regular per pupil allocation from the state. We also received the 22-23 school year a little over $15 million. What a significant difference that is making in the lives of our children. So what did you do with that, Dr. Burks? Well, we focused on early learning. We've added additional teachers into our classrooms to support early learning. When you think about it, there's so much research that suggests how important early learning is to the development of a child. A child's entire life, what they learn very early on. There was more than a decade it's been more than a decade since we in Allentown have offered early learning to our children. These level up dollars are going to make a significant difference in the time when our children begin to read, learn social skills, learn about life in general. Additionally, and I'm really excited about this as well, for more than a decade in Allentown, because we did not have the resources, and as a direct result of the level up funding, we're going to offer the arts back into our school district. We hired more than 38 teachers to include, just think about, in focusing on the whole child. So some people do well just in the academics, that's what they are. But for a child to be well-rounded and to be successful in school and life, they need all of these enriching experiences to make them who they are. So we're excited about that. We also have taken our level up funding and added various workforce development opportunities for our students, as well as we've increased the number of students who are going to be enrolled in our dual enrollment programs by 300%. By 300% as a result of level funding. We also hired this summer more than 120 students to experience various aspects of our organization. Technology, communications. They even helped Miss Matheson with getting the board books together. So and create agendas, all kind of great stuff. And that's my board president. Give her a round of applause. So just think of the difference that these dollars are making for the lives of students, particularly Allentown School District students, so that we can afford them some of the same access and experience that their suburban counterparts are receiving. I believe in Allentown. I believe in Pennsylvania. But we want to push everyone to continue to realize for communities like Allentown, and particularly Allentown, we need those additional resources so that our students can receive the same experiences as students across this nation, and particularly, and everyone knows that I'm still new to Pennsylvania, but just from driving 5 miles outside of the city, you can tell there's a sharp contrast between what students are receiving here and students receiving 5 minutes away from here. And I think they told me even over the border down in the West End. I don't have to go 5 minutes. Right over the border. We need these funds. So for every legislator beyond mine and everyone else who's listening here, we need you continue to advocate for this funding to make a difference for the children of Allentown, and particularly all urban students. I am so honored, as you know, and excited to serve as the superintendent of Allentown, and I'm really, really excited for the opportunity to serve with this great man that I'm going to introduce next. He is a relentless advocate for children. He does not mince his words. He lets you know what he's thinking. I've never met someone so impassioned in his role. People usually take on certain roles and they say, well, I'm this, for the title. But he really believes in education, the power of public education. He's on the front line. His children attend public school. I want to give a round of applause because I meet a lot of people and they talk about all these things, but their children are not sitting in the same seats. Let's give my friend, Representative Swire, a round of applause.
Well, good morning, everyone. Let me start by thanking you, Dr. Burks. I want to thank you, President Matheson, Vice President DeWilt, who I know is here because she also works in my district office, and as my Chief of Staff. I want to thank you all for your incredible leadership. Dr. Burks just did a remarkable job of outlining the major improvements that our children and that our families in Allentown will receive as part and parcel of the tough decisions, the years of let's be honest, instability in the school district being reversed, and what we're seeing with the leadership that we have in our district right now is a remarkable change, and not only what we're seeing from as a parent, as an ASD parent, with our kids each and every day, but also the public perception of our school district. And so I want to thank them all, and we'll do lots of rounds of applause today. But let me just start with an honest thank you. And let me also thank all of our educators that are here, the men and women of our schools that are teaching my kids, because I think most people here know my oldest daughter is going to be a junior at William Allen. My youngest daughter is, sorry Pat, is going to be a seventh grader at South Mountain. Don't be mad. And it's just, I know the incredible work that our teachers in Allentown do each and every day. I have a quick story about Pat, if I could. So, my daughter's a swimmer from Allen, right, Tom? Like we talk about the pool on a regular basis. So my daughter's a swimmer at William Allen and teaches the middle school swim program. And I love going to swim meets, but I'm going to watch my kid and the friends that, you know, she hangs out with on a regular basis. You don't often volunteer to go to other people's swim meets. They're long, they're hot, they get a little uncomfortable. But last year I was at a swim meet, a middle school swim meet, helping run a snack stand, and Sarah was coaching a bunch of kids. And who did I see walk in to watch a dozen of his students in a 2-hour swim meet at William Allen is Pat McNulty. And, you know, the dedication and involvement in the children's lives of all of our educators is remarkable. And if you're sitting through somebody else's swim meet, that is honest and real dedication to the lives and well-beings and the involvement of their kids. And so we hear those stories, Pat. You are a remarkable educator, you're a remarkable administrator, but you are not different than so many of our educators and administrators in Allentown. They care so very much about what's happening each and every day in our schools. And as we hear some of the negativity about our district, you can't help but think about Pat going to a middle school swim meet as proof positive that we have incredible educators, we have incredible parents, and we have incredible kids who get up each and every day and are just trying to do their very best. I know it because 2 of them are mine. And so when Dr. Burks talked about the incredible achievements the Allentown School District has done over the last couple of years, I like to think about 31st Street Southwest. If you don't know the south side of Allentown, that is literally the last street in Allentown. Giant grocery stores kind of on the other side there. And if you live east of 31st Street Southwest, you go to the Allentown School District. We're literally in a building that is 150 years old. And this is emblematic of what we have across our district. If you live the west of 31st Street Southwest, your kids go to a high school that has engineering courses, it's architectural courses, that has an emotional support dog that walks around the building. This isn't fair. It's not that I think those children deserve any less. I don't. The kids in the East Penn School District deserve all of those advantages that they have, but so do our kids. And the work that the Allentown School District has been able to do in the course of the last couple of years, in large part because of their, and predominantly because of their leadership, but in no small part to the amount of funding that we have been able to put in the public education on the state level is remarkable. I was talking to my friend and colleague Mike Schlossberg, who knows this building well. I'm going to steal his thunder. His wife teaches here. About what we've done. Last year, the state put in $37 million of renewable money into our schools. And the year before that was another $17 million. And this year, we were slated to get another $21 million. But a big chunk of that money is currently being held up in Harrisburg. $6.4 million of money is being held up as part of the level up funding that was agreed to by both the House, the majority in the House, and the majority in the Senate. Democratic-controlled House, Republican-controlled Senate. This was a bipartisan bill that was passed in both chambers, the House and Senate. Dirty little secret is the House and Senate don't always get along, right, Nick? Except for Nick, he's great. And it was passed in both chambers, and the money has still not been released. Now, the first budget that the Governor Shapiro is doing a great job of talking about the historic investments in basic education funding, special education funding, full day, a universal free breakfast, which is a giant win for kids across Pennsylvania. But there's still a tremendous amount of money that will impact our teachers here, our administrators here, but more importantly, our kids and our families here, that can be released today, but the theater of politics, the stupidity of the way we go about our business in Harrisburg is preventing that money from being released. It's making sure that our teachers have it harder this year than they did last year to be able to get the materials in their classrooms, or to be able to get those support services to help that kid that just needs a little bit more to do remarkable things. Folks, I'm a super poor kid. I lived in this neighborhood for a while, but really grew up at 10th and Shoe. And I love seeing the remarkable growth of kids like me, kids that may have had a little rough at home, who may have had a little instability at home, and seeing the remarkable talent and intellect and drive that they have. And I love seeing it each and every day here in my hometown. And I know with just a little bit more help from the Commonwealth, along with the incredible leadership and the incredible work of our teachers here in Allentown, our kids are going to continue to do remarkable things. We just need to make sure that they have all of the same resources as those folks that live west of 31st Southwest Street. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to my dear friend, Mike Schlossberg. Mike, as you heard, is not only a member of House Democratic leadership, not only a public school dad himself, but is also the lesser half of a marriage, including his wife, who is in fact an educator here at Harrison-Morton Middle School. Mike?
Let me start by confirming the rumor. I am absolutely the lesser half of a couple involved.
Wasn't a rumor, Mike.
So for those of you who have heard me speak about education before, some of this might sound a little bit familiar, but I always try to make these points because I think it's such a perfect illumination of where we are at in Pennsylvania when it comes to education, equity, funding, and opportunities. So let's start by reiterating the obvious. This building is 150 years old. I don't just want to talk about how old it is, though. I want to talk about the year it was built. 1871? Did I get that right, Mr. McNulty? 74, but construction started in 71, opened in 74. So 1874. Now, talking about that realistically, what that literally means is that you had younger brothers and sisters of Civil War veterans learning in a class that my wife now teaches in downstairs in room 114. Now, Morton may be the oldest building in the Allentown School District, but we have plenty of buildings that are still in operation that were built in the early 1900s, that still look like they were built in the early 1900s. And you compare that to other school districts. I'm privileged. I get to represent the Allentown School District and the Parkland School District. And Pete nailed it. We don't want to take a damn thing away from any kid in Pennsylvania schools. But we need to have a conversation about where these kids learn, because this building was built when the Civil War was still fresh in people's minds. Compare that to Parkland High School, which was built in the 1990s, has separate wings for art, music, and gym, and is shaped quite literally like the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. There's no way we can have a conversation about a just and fair educational system when you have inequities that exist based on which side of Cedar Crest Boulevard you live on. Now, the Commonwealth Court in Pennsylvania agreed. In a landmark decision about 8 or 9 months ago, they found that Pennsylvania's system violates educational provisions in the state constitution. They found that poor kids have less opportunities than richer kids. And quite frankly, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. But they also said we need to remedy that system. I'm honored. I get to serve as House Democratic Caucus Chair, which means I'm a member of leadership. Leadership on our policy committee toured the state last week, actually, where we went to different high schools across Pennsylvania. We saw incredible opportunities, we saw massive deficiencies, and where we saw students and teachers overcoming the odds despite everything that is stacked against them. We got to walk through Reading High School. Now, Reading is the poor school district in Pennsylvania. They have a high school that is reminiscent quite literally of a castle, but where upgrades are woefully inadequate. We got to walk through Carrick High School in Pittsburgh, where they are surviving despite a lack of investment and despite a funding system that still works against certain urban municipalities. That tour, in my mind, reiterated the need for Level Up. Now, I have to brag just for a second. I promise I'll be quick, but Level Up was my baby. I was the author of Level Up that got implemented in the budget 2 years ago. Thank you. and is unquestionably what I am most proud of my time in the legislature. Level up, here's the truth though. We have said it repeatedly, and I mean it. Level up isn't enough. It's just a bridge. It was a stopgap measure to make sure that we adequately funded our schools, that we directed funding towards the schools that needed it the most, and that, quite frankly, we kept our funding in the public school system and made sure that every dollar went to a public school system that is held accountable to the taxpayers and the students and the teachers of Pennsylvania. That being said, the inequity that the Commonwealth Court found exists doesn't just exist in terms of resources and per student funding that are given to our students. It exists in a wide array of areas. For example, there is no question, and I know this one very, very personally, that Allentown School District's teachers don't get paid as much as some of our wealthier counterparts. And that is not a slight at Dr. Burks or at anybody within the Allentown School District, because I know they are trying to wring every dollar to make sure they pay teachers what they deserve. But the end result is that we have very specific teacher shortages that exist in urban school districts and that also exist in rural school districts. One of the programs I wrote that passed the House, that unfortunately hasn't passed the state Senate yet, Nick, well, I know Nick's doing his best. He's going to kill me. I know that we need to do more, so I wrote this Grow Your Own program, which basically created a $10 million funding line item to allow for the specific creation of teacher pipelines so that we could take kids in high school or that are paraprofessionals and get them all the way through and help them become teachers within the school districts that they grew up in. Now, again, I always talk about my wife. I'm not sorry. My wife is homegrown. My wife is a William Allen alumni, and she loved this district, and she wanted to stay here, and that's why she's been here 17 or 18 years. But not everybody's going to have that pathway. And as a state, we need to do more to make sure that we give kids who want to stay here the opportunity to stay here. And in so doing, we can also make sure that we have teachers that are from the neighborhood and that look like the kids that they are teaching and that have the same experiences as the kids that they are teaching. And that's something that's really important, regardless of if you're talking about an urban or a rural area. And that's the last point that I actually want to make. I think too often we do an us versus them, urban versus rural. Here's the truth. Urban and rural school districts in Pennsylvania have almost identical struggles. They lack investment, they lack facilities, they lack infrastructure, and they lack teachers. As a state, we have an obligation, not just a financial one, not just a legal one, but a moral obligation to make sure that we are giving every kid the quality education that they deserve, regardless of their zip code. And that's something that I know we firmly believe. Speaking of, Allentown was very lucky, and as a result of our continued growth, we got a third member of our House delegation who continues to fight every day for the Allentown School District, and it's my honor to introduce my friend and the representative of Morton. I'm still sad, Josh, but Representative Josh Siegel.
Don't worry, Mike, I'll take good care of the school for you. So, I'm Representative Josh Siegel. I have the great privilege of being Allentown's third state representative and joining my wonderful colleagues, both Representative Schlossberg and Schweier. We've heard a lot today about the efforts that the Democratic caucus has made to invest in public education here in the Commonwealth. We're working to make sure that we cultivate the next generation of teachers, as you heard through Representative Schlossberg's Grow Your Own. And we're working to make sure that we invest in facilities like the school we're standing in here today. We're not just in the shadow of the Commonwealth Court's decision, which determined that the Pennsylvania system of public education is underfunded by one estimate of $4.6 billion. That we are not only failing our students from a financial perspective, but from a moral perspective. Our Constitution guarantees the right to a quality public education. We are constitutionally and morally obligated as a Commonwealth to make sure that every child, no matter their zip code or their geography, no matter where they reside, they are guaranteed a quality education. And we've talked a lot about how we can make sure that our students have the best teachers and the most qualified educators, that they have access to the best possible programs. And we should be proud here in the Allentown School District that despite all of the inequities that have been forced upon it and foisted upon it, we have done so well by our students because of the great leadership that we have in Dr. Burks. Like our dual enrollment program. We can do so much. The Allentown School District has been able to punch above its weight and be innovative and stretch every dollar that it has. But none of that can count for anything if we don't also ensure that our students are going to school in the best possible buildings. You just heard earlier today that Harrison-Morton next year will be celebrating its 150th anniversary. And That should not be a reason for accolades. It should be a call to action. It should be a reason to have a sense of urgency about how much we are failing our students. We should not have students going to school and learning about the history of the United States in a building where the election of Abraham Lincoln was still fresh in the minds of the folks who were going to that school. It's nothing short of a tragedy and a moral failure. And we were fortunate this year that Representative Schweier put forth House Bill 1408, which would have dedicated $350 million a year or $1 billion over the course of 3 years to make those necessary facility improvements, to make sure that regardless of your property value or the municipality you reside in, that every student would have access to the same quality facilities. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a rural district or an urban district. As Representative Schlossberg indicated, we have all the same problems. It's a chronic system of underfunding. It's a reliance on property taxes. We are 44th in the country for state share of public education funding. We have historically failed our school districts in terms of the state stepping up and paying its fair share. But none of us investing in the infrastructure around education will make a difference if the schools are too hot for kids to learn, if buildings are closed down because they find asbestos in the gyms or the stairwells. We have a Building 21 here in Allentown, but just a few months ago, the Building 21 in Philadelphia was shut down. That building was constructed in 1915. They found asbestos in the stairwells and the gymnasium. And mid through the year, students had their entire educational dynamic shifted. They had to scramble to find a new place for those kids to go. This is nothing short of an embarrassment. In the richest country in the world, in the most well-resourced nation, and in one of the wealthiest states in the country, it should be nothing short of an embarrassment that we allow our students to reside in districts and go to school in facilities that put their health in danger, that put their well-being in danger, and jeopardize their ability to do well. Now, we've done our part, and I think we have fought hard as a Democratic caucus in concert with our governor to make sure that we made the most historic and largest investment in public education in recent history. We are making dedicated efforts to fully fund our school repairs and refurbishments. We're also getting creative about how we make sure that our schools are environmentally and energy efficient. House Bill 137 would allocate $500 million to schools for solar. Initiatives like that enable our schools to not only be built for the future, but respect and ensure that we protect our environment. But we can't do it alone. We need to make sure that we have a willing body in the Senate. And the House caucus has done its job. House Democrats have shown up. We've put forth a solution and not slogans. We've delivered with results and not rhetoric. We have ensured that we have followed through on the mandate we were given when we took the majority. But none of what we do gets done unless the Senate is willing to step up and do its part to make sure we carry it across the finish line. And we have a great ally in the Senate in Senator Nick Miller, whose biggest priority has always been and continues to be public education. We all know that Nick has been an ongoing ally from his time on the school board. He was a dedicated proponent of facility improvements. We know that one of his biggest initiatives was making sure that the school district had a capital plan and had a clear-cut plan to make sure that we were modernizing our facilities. And we know that Senator Miller is going to help us make sure that these initiatives get across the finish line in the Senate, that he's going to work with Senator Costa and Senator Hughes, some of our strongest advocates, to make sure that we deliver on these Democratic priorities and that we make sure that we make these investments. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my friend and my peer. He makes me actually feel a little old. So, no. My friend and peer, Senator Nick Miller.
Thank you, Josh. No pressure. It's an honor to be back in Harrison-Morton. I've been here a number of times at this point, Governor Wolf and some other folks and recently the Pope's chair in the Senate, Vince Hughes. And we had a great tour about facilities and the investment of infrastructure prior to the budget. But as my colleague said, we did make a good first step. And I want to be clear that it was a first step. It was building a foundation of investment with a new administration, with Governor Shapiro, and new majority in the House, and hopefully one day a majority in the Senate, but there's a lot of work to do. But I want to talk a little bit about the investments we did make. $700 million in basic ed funding. We've got additional investment up to $1 billion for K-12 as a whole, and $50 million of that going to special ed, something that in the Allentown School District we have a higher percentage of. And then also, we talked about the free breakfasts But really what I want to talk about is the court ruling and the judge's opinion. It was 786 pages. I'm sure Pete Schweier read the entire thing front to back. But it's a clear statement. It wasn't an appeal opinion. Everybody agreed that we have a lot of work to do. And that's our job in the Senate and the House, to build consensus on both sides, regardless of parties, to get this done. We talk a lot about attracting companies to come to Pennsylvania, keeping families in Pennsylvania, but that doesn't happen if we don't invest in our education system. And especially here in Allentown, we've got great leadership in Dr. Burks, our board president, Audrey Matheson, and Nancy Wilt is here as well. We've got a great team. I look at Tom Smith, the facilities director, who I could speak ad nausea about how much, we've talked about buildings as the building chair on the Allentown School Board. We worked through air conditioning issues, and it always came back to funding. And when the new maps came out last year for the Senate, I stepped up and promised on the campaign I would always advocate for public education. And I continue to do that. We delivered, but this is the first step. We have a lot of work to do. Teacher stipends, level up, a lot of work in progress. Hopefully we'll get those done here this fall. But long term, as an appointee to the Basic Ed Funding Commission, something that Representative Schweier and I both sit on, we'll meet about 12 different times across the state talking about different investments across the state. Rural, urban, it doesn't matter in terms of school districts that need this investment, but it's something that we're going to fight for. We already have the court ruling, so these hearings are hearing from local communities, but we already know what we need to do. And Josh referenced the $4.6 billion estimate on education funding that's needed here in the state of Pennsylvania, but we've got to talk about funding consistently and build consensus around it. We rely on taxpayers, property tax owners here locally and across the state. They shoulder that burden. We continually see tax increases. Luckily, the Allentown School District did not raise taxes, and that should be highlighted in the news. We always like to highlight when we raise taxes, but they did not raise taxes this year. But it's a consensus building effort. So I am proud to stand and represent 11 school districts throughout the Lehigh Valley, but most importantly, the Allentown School District, because this is the school district that needs us the most at the moment. But we'll represent all of them, all the school districts across the Commonwealth in this fight. And I know that we had one of our parents, Yahira Alvarez, who was going to speak today. She couldn't make it. I believe it's Yvette Demore, thank you, Nancy, is going to speak now. So I want to introduce Yvette. Thank you. Come on up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Miller. I appreciate it. Hi, my name is Yvette Demore. I was asked at the last minute to speak today, so bear with me. I'm not really a public speaker, but I am a parent of twin boys who go to the Allentown School District. When I moved here in 1999 from Massachusetts, first thing I noticed is Allentown was a lot like where I grew up. They have the same issues with schooling and education and kids struggling. And then I had my kids. And my husband, Michael Demore, he's a district magistrate, but he grew up here. He went to Ritter, he went to Moser, he went to Harrison-Morton, and then he went to Deerhoff. So I was like, okay, what do you think we should do for them for education? And he said, absolutely public schools. And I was like, thank you, because the thought of putting them in a private or parochial just wasn't for me. I did public education. My husband did public education. And there's nothing like it. I lived blocks from 2 different charter schools, and I would never send my children there because it's not the same. Yeah, it looks pretty on the outside, but is it the same quality on the inside? No. Both my boys have IEPs because they have special needs. One has a dyslexia disorder, the other one has autism. Would they get the same care and attention at a charter school? No. Public school's the way to go. They have been nothing but fabulous, their teachers. From Dr. Marks at Ritter to Mr. McNulty here at Harrison-Morton, I never worry when I drop my child off for school that they're not going to get the best care, the best attention, and the best experience. When there's an issue, I get a phone call. When I have an issue, I just reach out. I get it answered. Never a problem. And I'm very grateful to that, Mr. McNulty. Thank you. Because as a parent, I worry constantly. I guess that's my job. But knowing that they're safe, knowing that they're getting a quality education is important. When we first discovered John's dyslexia, it was during COVID. He was being homeschooled because, well, schools were closed. Right away, I get on the phone with Ritter. Hey, something's going on. I think John has a reading issue. He can't spell words. He can't seem to get the letters straight. Right away, first thing they do is testing, get him done, figure out what he needs, get him an IEP. And he went from reading below grade level to, he just did his STAR test at the end of 7th grade. He's doing 10th grade reading. I'm like, I can't believe this, but you know what? I give those teachers so much credit. Mr. Wilburn, Mrs. Glassberg, Mrs. Cologne, and his guidance counselor, Mrs. Glassberg, sorry. I give them so much credit because they helped carve out what he needed. Would he get that at a charter school? Would he even get that consideration? Or would they ship him out someplace else because he doesn't fit their format? I don't know, but I'm not going to find out. My kids are staying where they are. And then when it's time for high school, they'll be going to Deerfield, just like Dad. And I wanted to say thank you to Mrs. Burks, to Peter, to Mr. Schlossberg, to Mr. Miller, to Mr. Siegel for their support of this school district. Without them, and without our teachers, and without our principals and our administrators, this would not be possible. My kids would fall through the cracks, like so many others could potentially, but they don't because of these people. I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for all you've done. And Mr. Peter, back to you.
So I want to thank Yvette in particular. She had absolutely no idea we were going to do this tour today. She was a last second substitute. We had another parent that unfortunately had something come up at the last minute, but I think Yvette did an amazing job in talking about. And look at her, she's right back to work, advocating for her kids, so I appreciate it. So we're going to close this press conference. I just really want to once again thank everyone, all of our speakers today, my colleagues who are incredible advocates with me on making sure that our schools get what they deserve, what our kids get what they deserve. I once again like to thank Dr. Burks, Principal McNulty, all of our administrators, school board members, and teachers that are here. You know, we'll certainly open it up to any questions if any members of the media have any. Otherwise, I know that today is a Nancy had some.
Question. I just wanted to point out, thank you for opening your building on what is your last Friday off of the summer, and welcoming us all here and showing up. So I just wanted to say that.
Absolutely, thank you so very much. So, yeah, guys, come on over.
Can I ask each?
You could, sure.
So my question is, Pittman and the administration both say that the House needs to write a fiscal code in order to get the remaining money released.
I strongly and fundamentally disagree with them. We have had level up funding written into law in multiple years now. That is the reason why, one of the major reasons why ASD has been able to do the things that they've been able to do, but also 104 or 105 school districts across the Commonwealth have been able to do what they've been able to do for a while. This has been in law. We have a formula. We have a formula that's been used multiple times. And it's not just me that's saying it. Our appropriations chairman, Jordan Harris, took to the floor of the House in the waning days of the budget debate and said, we could do it at any point in time. There is already a way to do this. It is not the only thing that only exists in code bills, I assure you of that. And anybody who pretends that it's the only thing that exists in code bills is just not being honest with themselves.
Why is the administration?
You would have to ask them. I'm not gonna, I'm not for 1 second going to speak on behalf of the administration. Unless anybody else wants to.
You got that. Nope, I'm good. I'm gonna speak for me. I think that's a good plan.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we'll speak for each other.
Yeah.
So.
To be fair though, I interviewed the governor last week and he tried to minimize the $400 million as really not a big deal. The school districts are already getting their money. This will eventually be dealt with. it seems like though, with the impetus from your caucus to get it done, you don't feel confident that the Senate is going to actually come back and will come to the table on this?
I'm not going to, Nikki, would you like to speak for the majority in the Senate? I'll certainly happy.
I know there's conversations ongoing, but I mean, this level up funding is crucial. And we talked about the budget impasse that we're seeing post the end of June. School districts had to start considering borrowing money, which costs more money for the taxpayers in the school district. So that frustration is there, that we need to build a consensus to get this done sooner rather than later. So we continue to talk to our leadership team. There's conversations ongoing, but I'm not going to comment on the administration standpoint either.
The one thing I can definitely say, obviously, no budget is ever a completely smooth process. The lack of a fiscal code, though a hindrance, is not the end of the world, because at the end of the day, this is going to get done, one way or the other. There are too many items that do, regardless of any disagreements about the fiscal code, there are too many items that do genuinely rely on a fiscal code that we actually need to get out. There are too many priorities for both House Democrats and, quite frankly, for House Republicans as well as Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans that need a fiscal code. The fact that we were able to get out the vast majority of the money, that the new level up funding is a comparatively small portion of the budget, means the school district can operate. That being said, we unquestionably need to finish this. We do need a fiscal code. Regardless of any disagreements, we need a fiscal code that's going to get this out there so that buildings can continue, so that school districts can continue to make the improvements that they need. I think Dr. Burks did an excellent job of highlighting how level up funding has been so important to the Allentown School District, but Pete and I had a very funny moment. We actually noticed this independently. Like, guys, we were leaning on a card catalog while we were waiting. Like a literal card catalog, and he noticed it and said something to me, and I said, no, I noticed it because I actually opened it up because I wanted to make sure there weren't any cards in there. And there's not, but I kind of think that's emblematic of where we're at as a school district and of the things that we still need to do and why level up funding is so important.
And while you're there, you talked about how level up's a great first step.
Yes.
What else do you think needs to be done?
Close the gap. $4.6 million, or $4.6 billion. We have to close that gap. We're not going to do that in 1 year. It's a multi-year process, no question about it. And Level Up is a bridge to help us get there. But at the end of the day, as the author of Level Up, my dream is that Level Up becomes irrelevant because we've actually closed the funding gap that exists between the richest and the poorest school districts. Josh correctly noted we are 44th in the nation in terms of state share of education spending, but it's also worth reiterating, I will do so time and time again, we are dead last in the country in terms of the gap between the richest school districts and the poorest school districts. And there are very few places where that's more obvious than the difference between Allentown and Parkland or East Penn. It reiterates our desperate need to close that funding gap.
May I ask one more question?
Sure.
You guys talked about teacher retention or teacher recruitment, but when I was at the Allentown School Board meeting last night, facilities, is down 44 positions. I saw a report that said that principals, there's a hard time in places to attract principals in school districts. Is there a bigger issue of getting people into these positions than not just teachers?
Yeah, I'll speak to that quickly. So we are, by every metric, we should be churning out somewhere upwards of 15,000 new certified educators annually. At our height, we were turning out over 20, so we were a net exporter of educators across the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States. Last year, we turned out 4,700 new teachers in schools, or in our Pennsylvania universities, and that's our PASHE schools, the Kutztowns and Bloomsburgs of the world. That's our state-related Pitt, Penn State, Temple. That's our private schools. 4,700 new certified teachers, when we need at minimum year after year after year 15,000 to replace teachers that are retiring, to address the growth of the growing school districts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The lack of people entering the workforce of education is an absolute real crisis. The House Education Committee had our very first hearing on stemming the tide of the teacher shortage, and as a result, the House. Sorry, Nick, I'm going to pick on your chamber here a little bit. But I did this to the majority chair of education just 2 weeks ago at a conference that we were just at. We've passed Grow Your Own, Mike Schlossberg's bill, Grow Your Own, which would incentivize and encourage students that are in the school districts to go and choose a career in education, whether it's administration, whether it's IT, whether it's facilities, whether it's security, whether it's education. We passed a scholarship program out of the House. We have that was specifically for educators. We passed legislation that would allow people who are in the country with a valid immigration status to become educators. Currently, they're prohibited by state law from becoming educators. You could become a doctor and a nurse, but you can't become a teacher if you pass all the other exams. We have passed legislation of a tutoring program of Representative Bob Freeman's that's specifically meant to help people go into the field of education. We passed student teacher stipend out of the State House, which helps those young people that are student teachers be able to actually afford to be student teachers, because right now everything's out of their own pocket. We did all of that, and our dear friends in the state Senate haven't passed one of those bills. So your question is absolutely valid and 100% right, that we have a education crisis, not just with teachers, but across the spectrum. Where do we get most of our principals? They were once teachers. I mean, Mr. McNulty was a teacher right here at Harrison-Morton before. So those administrators, those people, I mean, I look at Principal Will Sang. He'll always be Principal Sang because he was my daughter's principal. Will was an educator in the school district, became a principal, and is now an administrator with the school district. Where do we get our administrators? They all start from being teachers, and unless we fix that infrastructure of that education infrastructure that will put more teachers, create more teachers, we're going to be stuck. And it'd be great if the Senate would get up off their butts and actually pass some of these bills that everybody knows we need.
Yeah,
please.
I just want to add to that the reality is that in districts across the Commonwealth, whether you're a paraprofessional, whether you're a guidance counselor, a mental health professional, an educator, a principal, a custodian, you show up and you do your job every day regardless of what we do in Harrisburg, regardless of how we are delivering on our constitutional obligations and our promises and our commitments. There is nothing more determined and gritty and innovative and dedicated than the public education system and the folks that make it function. And they have continued to show up despite the fact that we have failed our constitutional or moral obligation, despite the fact that our school system in this Commonwealth is underfunded by $4.6 billion, despite the fact that the Allentown School District was underfunded by $100 million. Every day our educators showed up and they taught our kids just the same. They believed just the same. They had the same passion, the same determination, the same dedication. Same goes for our paraprofessionals and our custodians and everyone who makes sure that our kids get a shot at a quality education. They are punching above their weight. They are fighting hard to make sure that despite all the obstacles and despite all the barriers, they are making sure that every kid gets a fair shot, no matter how much is aligned against them. And frankly, I think the crisis of recruitment and the issues that we have as a public education system in terms of bringing people in to a career in public education is because for so long we have sent a message and a narrative and a signal to people in the public education system that as a Commonwealth we don't care, we don't value public education, we don't believe in it, and we frankly have not put our money where our mouth is, and that has changed because this Democratic majority in the House has delivered like never before. We got a mandate when we won, and we have done nothing but show up consistently and constantly for our public education system. As Representative Schleier has indicated, he's probably been the most active committee in Harrisburg, pumping bills out like crazy, delivering for our public educators, delivering for our public education system. So I frankly think the way that we address that crisis is what we've been doing. We continue to signal to folks thinking about a career in public education that we're here, we've got your back, we believe in you, and it's about high time and hell time that we put our money where our mouth is. And we, over the course of the next decade, continue to make sure we equalize that balance and close the gap. And it's imperative that our Senate Republican majority does their job, holds our constitutional and moral obligation, and shows up and actually plays ball instead of closing the door on legitimate solutions, and stops putting forth distractions, frankly, like diverting public education dollars to things like vouchers, to things that don't solve the constitutional crisis of not meeting our constitutional obligation to public education, plain and simple.
All right, Morton, stop, go home.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
I don't actually have the authority to do that, Dr. Morton.
Kick us out.
Last